Hi, BookTube. It's Gina. Happy Thursday. I wanted to talk to you today about book collecting. Now, I talked yesterday about my book buying and shopping habits. I love book shopping. I love going out to buy books. But I also love book collecting. So I thought I would do what no one quite knows if it's a tag or not tag. It is all about my personal library. And I'm just gonna call it like it is. This is a tag. I'm gonna tag people at the end because I wanna hear about your personal library. This was originated via a conversation that Shelley Swearingen had on her channel about her personal library. She was not willing to commit to making it a tag, but it's a tag. So we're just gonna call it like it is. We're gonna make it a tag. I've seen several people do it. Some people did it as a response video. Some people did it as a tag, but yeah, I'm gonna do it as a tag, and I'm gonna tag a couple people at the end who I'm really curious about their collecting habits. So let's get started. Prompt number 1 is, do you have some books around, or do you think of yourself as having a collection or personal library? And yes, I do have a collection. I do have a personal library. It's been much more curated, I would say, in the last 3 years. I've started to really think more about the books that I want to own for aesthetic reasons. So I collect Miss Reed, I collect Who's Right Here, I collect Rosamund Pilcher, and primarily vintage books that were written in, I would say, the 1910s to, well, the 2000s, really. I mean, the whole 20th century. I love that era for female authors particularly. And I also love Victorian literature. So I collect, here's my shelf of Jane Austen right here. So yes, I definitely have a collection. I wouldn't say that it is a collection for money. So I'm not collecting money like books to invest in. I'm just collecting things that I love, and these are the books that I love. This shelf behind me is my sort of my favorites of the favorites. I'll talk more about that in a second. Prompt number 2 is, what does collection or personal library mean to you? And really, it means so much to me. I love having books around. I love having walls of books. I love the aesthetic of the book, how it feels in your hand, how it looks gathered on the wall. To me, it's so decorative. In addition to being valuable for what is inside of the book, it's also valuable for me to just see it as a whole. I think it's lovely. I think that I just look at how pretty that looks. Doesn't that just look wonderful? I get like pitter-pattery in my heart when I see people's bookshelves or when I see stacks of books. It just, I don't know, something about it just makes me so happy. Prompt number 3, what is your personal library for? So it's to read, it's to look at, it is to accumulate. So it is part of the joy to me of gathering a personal library is the fun of shopping, of hitting used bookstores, of having book dates, of buying books. I think it's so much fun to buy books. And if you buy books, subsequently you own books. And so I love to buy, I love to collect. I didn't number the prompt, so I'm just going to go the next one. I don't know what number I'm on. Where is your personal library? Contained to a single room or spread out all about the house? So it's primarily in 2 rooms. Although I have a small house, I do not have books in my library, in my bathroom. I do not have books in my bedroom other than the books that are either like on my nightstand as being read, because I keep that room fairly minimal. So what I have is in the living room, which is where I sit, I have these shelves behind me, which are really my collections, my groups of books that I love are on these two shelves. And then I'm gonna see if I can get this to work. I'm gonna tilt you over. You've seen this background maybe a little bit, but over here behind my chair, I've got mostly books that I have not yet read. So that is my shelf of TBR, of more of my new releases that I've purchased that I have not read. Now, just to be clear, I have not read every single book on these shelves. I've got some collectible signed books here that I haven't read, but primarily these are my sort of collection-y books. And then over there are books that I'm accumulating that I want to read. In my office, which I showed you a little bit of during my Tolkien Reading Day video, I've got 3 more of these tall bookshelves, and on those shelves we've got our nonfiction. I've got my Everyman's Library, my Modern Library collection, which I love. I love those little editions of those old vintage Modern Library and Everyman books. I've got records albums on one tall shelf, which I know is not books, but is also a collection that I love. And then overflow of more fiction, more new releases, more TBR things. And then, I forgot, I've got a book shelf on my landing up at the top of the stairs right here, which is a shorter glass-fronted shelf, which is primarily my paperbacks. My Agatha Christie collection is up there because the shelves are a little bit smaller, so the paperbacks fit perfectly on there. So I've got like Agatha Christie, I've got some of my middle grade books in there. A lot of my little paperback mysteries are in there because they fit so well. So that's primarily paperback. So they're pretty much spread out through the house in different areas, except for in the bathrooms and in the bedroom. On occasion, I've had stacks of books in the bedroom, and I do like that, but I go in phases where I'm decluttering and kind of streamlining that area, and then I pile them up occasionally again, because I do love the look of a stack of books in there. So I'll probably do another stack at some point. Now I'm just rambling. Let's go on to the next prompt. How many books make up your personal library? I have no idea, but what I did is I just actually counted up one shelf and counted up how many shelves I have and sort of took that as an estimate, and that number came to 1,000, which is kind of funny that it came to a perfect 1,000. I think it's right around there, maybe a little bit more, because the shelf I counted was actually a shelf of fatter nonfiction books. So it's probably a smidge higher than that, because there are way more than 25 books on, like, for instance, that shelf. So I would say maybe 1,500. Now, if I had a bigger house, I would have more walls of books and I would own more books because I love walls of books. The next prompt is, how do you organize your personal library? And it's not really organized. I already talked a little bit about where things are. So I try to keep authors together. I have my favorites right here. I have my nonfiction together. I have my cookbooks together, but my TBR shelves and my fiction shelves, they're not organized in any way. With 1,500 books, I don't really need to organize them. I know where everything is. Well, for the most part. I've occasionally bought duplicates without realizing it, because some of my paperback shelves I don't look at as much, so I forget sometimes that I've got stuff in there. But otherwise, it's not organized. It's not organized at all, which is okay with me. Prompt number next. I forgot what number I'm on. Do you keep track of your personal library? And if so, how? And I do not. Excuse me. I've gone through phases where I would like to catalog my library. So I got a couple library apps like Library Thing where I'm like, ooh, I'm going to scan all my books in and keep track. No, I'm not a chronicler. I don't really chronicle things well. I'm not good at keeping track of things, and I didn't want to put any work into it. I'm too lazy to spend the time that it takes to actually like put every single book into an app. Plus, a lot of my books are old and they don't have barcodes or ISBNs, and those you have to manually put in, and no, it just was too much work. So I do not keep track of my library. I have started keeping track of some of my collections because I'm to the point now with a couple of the authors that I like to collect where I've got a lot of them, and I've been accidentally buying repeats. So I have created a spreadsheet where I've listed out what I own in certain collections so that when I'm shopping, I don't duplicate what I already own. But other than that, I don't really keep track. The next prompt is, how do you decide to add a book to your personal library? And I add it if I want it, if I love it. If I'm out shopping, puttering, and something sparks my fancy, I will buy it. I'm starting to lean more towards only buying vintage books. I'm less and less buying hard paperback or paper books in new releases. Because those tend to be the ones that I get rid of first. But I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I have no problem if I see a book that I want and I have the money for it and I have the space for it, I will buy it. So I don't generally make decisions about what books I'm going to add to my library. There are certain collections that I would like to continue to add to, so I am specifically looking for some things, but generally I'm a spur of the moment buyer, and I love adding books to my collection, and I don't think about it. The next prompt is, when it's time to cull your personal library, how do you decide what stays and goes? And I do have to cull periodically because there's only so much space. So generally, once things start kind of piling up, I know that it's time to do a purge. And usually what goes is the older new releases. So I just purged a few Margaret Atwoods that I knew I wasn't going to read. And it's really easy for me to purge, actually. Even though I love my books, I do it quickly. I go through and grab the ones that I just know I'm not going to read or are easy to replace. Or if I do decide I want to read them, I know they're easy to get. And so I'm pretty good at just grabbing things and letting them go. Next prompt is, does your personal library have books you haven't read or may not read? Yes, it does. I love having a lot of books that I have not read. I feel no compunction to read every book that I own, although I'm not opposed to it. I own some misread books that I haven't read yet, which delights me because I know that I still have some to look forward to. The next prompt is, what do you think about the idea of a zero TBR? And that does not appeal to me. I love to own a lot of books that I haven't read. So for me, zero TBR is not anything that I feel compelled to do, but I'm going to tag a couple people that I think do have a zero TBR goal because I would like to hear what other people's thoughts are on that. And the last prompt is, how do you feel about towards your personal library? And I think you can tell I love my library. I love my books. I love the way they look. I love the way I feel when I look at them. I love reading them. I love memories attached to certain books. So I love my library. I love having books around me. I can't imagine not having some big bookshelves around because I think aesthetically they are so pleasing. But who knows? I'm also a living, growing, changing person. So maybe eventually I won't want to be weighed down by so many books. But right now I'm loving what I own and what I'm buying and curating my library. So I am going to tag a couple people that I don't think have talked about this in this way recently. The first is Elle at Elle Thinks, because I know Elle is working on a zero TBR, and so I'm really curious to see what she thinks about her collection. Also, AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. They read a lot of new releases and collect paperbacks, I think. So I'm really curious, AJ, how you feel about your collection. Also, I'm going to tag Mark at Book Time with Elvis. Mark does own some books, but I've never really seen like a lot of his shelves. So Mark, I'm also really curious about your collection. And then I'm going to tag Jess, Book Girl TV. Jess has been such a strong supporter of my channel since the very beginning. She's got a great channel, and I would love to see Jess do this tag. So that is it for me today. I will talk to you next time. Bye.